3, 2, 1. This is the Own the Block podcast with your host, Josh Derriman and Pierce Burton.
The Own the Block podcast. This is Pierce Burton with Josh Derriman. How we doing, Josh?
Hey, Pierce, doing well. Sunny out here in California.
Yeah, it's starting to heat up here in Tennessee. So today we're going to specifically cover what is a good real estate deal. And, you know, both of us have done some good deals. We've done some bad deals in the past. We've seen a lot of bad deals as lenders and some good. But the first thing I wanted to talk to you about was, you know, people look for a good deal in a specific market, and a good deal in that market might be something completely different than a deal in another market. If you're buying in, let's say, California, opposed to, you know, buying in, let's say, South Carolina or something like that. Can you speak to that a little bit, Josh?
Yeah, you and I talk about this all the time. In California, it's really hard to do an income play. You're more looking at appreciation. There's areas where you are focused where it's almost entirely an income play, and there's variations of that. A lot of people take their business plan and try to apply it in multiple areas, as opposed to, you know, creating a business plan for that particular area or that particular property. That's what I see a lot, is that somebody might be successful in Nashville, and then they take that and they go to El Paso and they think it's something that will apply to El Paso. Not necessarily.
Well, and I think that's one thing that's missed constantly by even new and old investors, in terms of you need to let the area and you need to let the market and the property dictate your strategy, and not necessarily let your strategy dictate what you're going to do. And it's the same thing with mortgage lending on our side. People want a one-size-fits-all loan product, and there isn't that. You need to tailor whatever type of loan you're doing, or if you're paying for the property in cash, you're getting a rehab loan, all those different types of things based on the property, the market, and what you want to do with the property after everything is finished. All of that needs to be tailored to your loan product as well.
100%. Yesterday, we had one of our clients reach out. She wanted to make an offer on a property. And after doing a little due diligence on the property, we're switching from a residential loan to a commercial loan. And you and I laugh at it. We'll get clients that'll call and they'll say, "Hey, what's the rate today? What's the rate today?" And, you know, if you know anything about mortgage lending, rate's important, but it's entirely dependent on the property, the project, the borrower, the down payment, the particular situation. A lot of people think it's burger, and it's just not. A lot of mistakes are made by people where they are so focused on rate that they actually lose out. They make poor business decisions. And it's the same thing as circling back, it's the same thing with making decisions in discrete areas. That example of El Paso could seem like it's a great deal if you're using it based off of Nashville thinking, but you have to really get to know the area. I know you're looking at moving into some additional areas, and you're taking your time. You're learning the area, the eccentricities before you start diving in the deep end of the pool.
Yeah, before I talk about that, go back to that client that you're talking to yesterday, and why, in her particular situation, you decided that a commercial style loan was better than, I think you said conventional, right?
Correct. And so the client called and she said, "Hey, I want to buy this single family residence. I believe the asking price was $800,000. Can I buy it with, 10% down, 20% down. And I said, sure, on its face, absolutely, we can do that. And I had her send me the property address, and I looked at it, and because of the pictures, I called the listing agent, and I called the listing agent. She sent me schematics of the property. It's actually an 8-bedroom property, 2 levels. 4 of the bedrooms are below grade. And as it turns out, it's really more of a group home property. And talking with the agent, I said, are there any comparable sales in the 5 miles to this property? And she said, actually, no, you're the first person that's asked me that. The current owner has not been able to get standard financing because none of the residential appraisers were able to get anything that anyone would lend on. So in this particular circumstance, with this particular property, a commercial lender would be more than happy to lend on it, but in a residential side, it would just be a waste of time.
And what was the zoning on the property?
It was an odd zoning, particularly to that state, but it was a residential zoning.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the way that they built the property was such that it would have been almost impossible to get a good, clean residential appraisal. Because as you know, appraisers use comps. And if you just think of your own neighborhood, how many 8-bedroom, 5-bath homes are there in your area? Much less, 4 of the bedrooms being below grade, some funkiness with the way that the property was laid out. There just weren't going to be good residential comps.
And why is that property able to get a commercial appraisal if it's a single family home? How are we going to get around that?
Sure. So on the commercial side, they are going to look at it from a different business perspective. So they're going to look at it and say, hey, you're going to use this as a group home. What is the utility of this property, the income potential as a group home versus the standard residential sales comp that you get from a residential appraisal?
So I think the next obvious question, and something that we might get from some of our clients knowing that we can do this, is what about Airbnb income? Can I buy a single family home, get that thing cash flowing like a mother, and then do a commercial appraisal and get this thing to appraise for a way more than what a single family home would appraise for in that particular neighborhood?
It's an interesting question. I'd like to get your opinion on it once I'm done. There's not a lot of commercial lenders right now that are super excited about lending on a single family residence Airbnb. So could you get more in the marketplace for that property if you were running a very profitable enterprise? Sure. But in the current market, it's not an exciting thing for a commercial lender to get into, because the utility of the house in that circumstance is probably going to be more geared toward residential than actual commercial, even if you're using it for commercial use.
Yeah, I would consider Airbnb to be loosely the term of a business, when if you're running a halfway house or something like that out of a residential property, that's more of a sustainable, real business that you have to have a license for, all that different type of thing, when anybody can Airbnb. But that brings me to a funny story. I actually had, and this property you're talking about is in Colorado, right?
It is.
I actually had a guy call me, this is probably 9 months ago, from Colorado, and he goes, I bought this house for $300,000, and it's now bringing in $5,000 a month in positive cash flow after expenses other than the mortgage, taxes, and insurance, right?
Uh-huh.
And he goes, I want to do a cash out refi. And I look at comps in the area, and they're right at what he paid for it, whatever it was, $325, $350. Now he's doing incredible cash flow numbers on that particular home, but he goes, yeah, this place is now worth $650,000. And it's just a standard 3-bed, 2-bath. And I said, why do you say that? He said, well, look at the cash flow on it. And so a lot of people don't understand that on a 1 to 4 unit property, that doesn't equate. And I'm just like, sorry, man, we can't, a lender will not consider the value to be such, even though this property is bringing in great Airbnb rental income.
So yeah, essentially what it is that you can run a nice, successful business out of a residence, but that doesn't change the character of the property.
Mm-hmm.
And so if somebody has to foreclose on a property, that doesn't mean that they can run a successful business out of your single family residence. The character of the property is residential. Sometimes we will run into something where somebody's living in it, it appears to be residential. And this doesn't happen a ton, but an appraiser will go out and he'll determine that the highest and best use of that particular property is not residential. It's commercial. And sometimes that is the case where it's a particular setup with the property and how it's structured or how the land is set up that the highest and best use is commercial. But in general, that's pretty rare that you find a residential property that truly is highest and best use commercial.
So in your opinion, getting back to kind of the subject of the day, what is a good, what would be good cash flow numbers in today's market that could say, I can pay retail value for this property and it's going to be worth it from a cash flow perspective in today's rental market, which is very hard to do?
I mean, that's a great question. And it takes us, as you said, back to where we started in California. It's really tough. You have to put a substantial amount down for something to even have any sort of remote cash flow positivity. In other parts of the country, that's not true at all. You can put 10, 20% down and have a very nice cash flow. We've seen it where people will get deals where the debt service ratio is well over 150, it'd be 200. But those are areas, it tends to be where the appreciation isn't as high as some other areas. So like in California, your cash flow tends not to be the primary focus. It might be appreciation over time. And then you can get into all sort of variations of that. But usually if your cash flow is very strong, you're not seeing year-over-year appreciation. That's that fantastic.
So I think a bare minimum rule of thumb for a cash flowing property for me, if you're paying market value for that property, would be you need to buy a property with a cap rate that has a cap rate 2% higher than your interest rate. And I think that's a really good rule of thumb for buying just a pure cash flow play. Now, in today's market, like we talked about, that's almost impossible to find because that means you're basically having to buy 9 caps. And there's not that many markets in the country that you can buy a 9 cap at market value unless you're buying in Podunk, Alabama or something like that, right? But there are other ways to buy a good deal that don't necessarily have to meet that minimum criteria that I have, that I'll still buy the property. One of those obviously on a 1 to 4 unit is forced appreciation and being able to rehab a property and pull all your cash out. If I get paid to buy a property at the end of the day after the BRRRR method, buy, refinance, or buy, rehab, refinance, repeat, then I'm happy, and the property could be taking a slight loss even. And so that's not going to have good cash flow numbers, but I own that property for free. And in the long term, I'm going to see appreciation. I'm going to see rent increases and hopefully see interest rates drop where I can refinance. And then that looks like a beautiful cash flow deal.
But you've also done the opposite. You've purchased properties recently where the cash flow wasn't that great, but you saw the long-term appreciation, and we'll call long-term 3 to 5 years. as being very strong. And so having that flexibility of mind is important.
Well, I think, one thing that we're struggling with, and one thing that I don't think a lot of people think about, is the cost to build, right? And if you're buying properties that cannot be built today at the price that you're buying it for, if you think the market that you're buying in is going to see population growth, then buying that property is a smart play, because if you can't build it, then properties are going to have to come up to the price of building for them to build any more homes. And so the prices have to increase in those particular markets. And so that's where I've done that on 1 to 4 unit properties. And then obviously on 5 units and more, where rents aren't that high, a lot of times I'm buying properties that are under rented. And that's a completely different play that makes things a good deal, where you can actually raise the rents and then get the value of the property to increase just by raising those rents over a short period of time, or a medium short time.
You bring up a good point. We see a lot of properties where they're being purchased and the rents that are currently being received are way below market, shockingly below market.
Yeah.
And in many cases, the price of the property is a function of that. The homeowner, the landlord, has just not kept up rents, and so they're ending up selling the property to you for a substantial discount as a result. You get in there, you clean it up a bit, you add 50% of rents, or even 100%, and it ends up being a scraping deal.
Yeah, I think it's crazy how many people just let their rents stay low and don't increase rents, and I think it's, this sounds bad, but I think too many people have a conscience, and
Too many nice people out there.
Too many nice people out there. At the end of the day, there's this thing called inflation, and you should at least be keeping up with inflation when you're raising rents, or you're actually losing money almost,
So I see this in some states. It's funny where we're going with this. So I see it in my area where the local governments, and this is in other states, a lot of blue states, where the local government will say, hey, these landlords are bad people. They're charging too much. So we're going to create caps. You can't increase your rent more than 3% a year or 5% a year or whatever it is. And so what it does is it's been kind of interesting. Is a lot of those homeowners that were renting out their properties, they basically say, I'm out, I'm done. I don't want to be in this business anymore. And it actually reduces the housing stock for renters, which is the exact opposite of what the local governments are trying to do. Or what it does is it forces people to be more cognizant of that and be more business minded and say, you know what, as much as I would love to let you roll for the next 5 years and not increase your rent, I don't really have a choice, because the government may come in and cap me. And if I'm charging you $1,000 a month and the market rent's $1,500, I don't want to get capped at $1,000. So I have to keep up with the cost of inflation, even though I'm a nice guy, because the government may come in and put me in a position that I don't want to be in. So you're starting to actually see landlords push the rents higher in these areas that are doing this than you would otherwise. And so the effect of these policies are actually pushing up rents as a function of unintended consequences.
No, I've had clients say to me, I'd rather sell. I have a renter that I can't get out of this property, and I can't raise rents in a market with rent control. And they will literally say, I would rather sell this property and 1031 into something else where that is unrented, so then I can go and get market rents, than hold on to this property. And so then that tenant's getting kicked out anyway. And not in every place, because in some of these places they even have rules that the tenant can remain in place. I think, out there in the Bay Area where you're at, people can sell it. Like I think in Oakland, right? They can sell a property, and even if you want to own or occupy the property, that renter can stay in, right?
Yeah, there's municipalities out here in California where it's pretty crazy. There's horror stories where you want to sell a property, but the tenant's been there, so they have rights, and you have to pay the tenant to leave.
Cash for keys, baby.
Yeah, and it's not it's not a small amount. I've seen cases where you're paying your tenant $50,000, $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 to leave the property.
Really?
To give up their tenant rights.
That much?
Because otherwise, absolutely, San Francisco especially. So let's say you have properties worth $2 million, and you want to sell it, but the tenant has the right to live there at the whatever rent that you have, and because so many things are rent controlled, it's artificially low. It's the whole separate podcast on that crazy nonsense. But let's say you were renting a property in San Francisco for $800 a month, which is insanely low. The landowner would have to convince the tenant to leave to be able to sell the property to somebody else, because who's going to want to buy a $2 million property with an $800 a month renter? It doesn't make any sense. So as a homeowner, you pay this person to get out of there so that you can actually sell it. And that's the sort of unintended consequences of some of these policies. And so you're seeing an assault on private property rights in a lot of states like this. And that's a pretty egregious example. But with a lot of states, you're seeing crackdowns on VRBOs, where the municipalities will come in and say, listen, we're not going to, we know you've been renting this out. Everything was fine. You have a license, but we're not going to let you have a license anymore. And so you could have a nice VRBO property that you're cash flowing $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 a month. And the government can just say, you know what, we're not going to let you do it anymore. And you have no recourse. So you really have to be careful about where you're buying these properties. Obviously, stay away from San Francisco as much as you can. But those are things that a lot of people don't think about when they buy in these areas. They think, oh, nothing's going to change. The municipality's not going to come in and essentially take money out of my pocket. But it happens all the time.
So let's get back to, finding a good deal. Another strategy I wanted to cover is, the fix and flip, or the BRRRR method. Basically, you're buying a property that needs some work, and you're rehabbing that, and you're either turning around, putting it on the market, or you're refinancing it and trying to get all those funds back out. For me, in any one of these deals, I don't want to be more than 75% of my total dollars in the deal, counting acquisition and rehab, of what I think that final value is going to be. Is that where you are, Josh, too?
So my classic number has been 30%, but I'm a little more conservative than you.
So 70%.
25.
I'm talking
20.
I'm talking max. Like I'd rather,
sure.
I'm going to make an offer at 60% first, right?
You and I talk about this all the time. We see people that are trying to flip properties for $10,000 profit or $15,000 profit, which is insane. That's the sort of stuff that I used to see before we had the 2008 crash, where people were flipping properties for pennies profit. And it's insane. Like you might be able to go along and scrape a little here and there, but law of averages, you're gonna take one in the shorts. You really have to be careful about maintaining those margins. And I do see a lot of, especially first timers, they don't understand that. And there's plenty of mistakes out there as a result.
I think the biggest mistake that I see, or something that people don't factor in, is how sellable that property is, and then also how long the rehab's going to take. People do the same calculations on a $150,000 rehab opposed to a 30. When on a 30, you might be able to finish rehab in under a month after acquisition, or even quicker than that if you got a good contracting team. But if you have a $150,000 rehab, it's going to take much longer, especially let's say you're adding on to that property and you're having to pull permits and potential engineering plans if you're adding square footage, all that type of thing. So that profit on those deals needs to be even larger because there can be unforeseen circumstances opposed to just throwing lipstick on a pig and redoing flooring, painting, maybe redoing the countertops. You can get in and out of there quick, and that type of stuff is predictable. So you can go more skinny on those deals because your time invested and your money in terms of rehab costs is going to be a lot less.
100%. I created a rule for myself. I never purchase anything that I was going to add square footage to.
Yeah.
Because that's a completely different setup. The time frames are completely different. I know you've been kind of playing with that idea. Could you talk about your experience, the difference between having a contractor that is your contractor that you effectively control versus before when you were first starting and you were kind of dialing for dollars trying to find somebody or some various subcontractors?
Yeah.
Because it makes a big difference.
Oh, for sure. So, I mean, I have a contractor today that I can just send a deal to, and he will get me an estimate within about 24 hours, sometimes quicker than that, or he can look at it and at least give me a rough estimate. And, I've gotten pretty good at knowing what something's going to cost. I'm normally within, about 20% of where costs are going to be on anything, but, and he'll jump on it right away. When previously, I was trying to nickel and dime my way through things, getting multiple quotes on properties. And, that's why one reason it's so important when you find somebody who's good at their job, whether it's a contractor, realtor, mortgage lender, property manager, maintenance guy, landscaper, that you stick with them and you keep giving them business because you're going to become a priority for them most of the time. And it's going to bode really well for you in terms of making more money on those deals and even more important, being able to turn stuff quickly, right? I think it's undervalued how paying a little bit more and doing something quickly and efficiently and right will actually make you more money and lead you to more success in the long run than anything.
Yeah, the danger of the lowest bidder. I'd rather pay 25% more to a contractor that I feel confident that they're going to get it done on time than go with somebody that saves me $1,000, $2,000 and then run the risk of shoddy work. Do you feel comfortable sharing any of your bad experiences with contractors?
Yeah, we just had an electrician actually who was subcontracted by my contractor, who my contractor had to fire off the job because he paid him, and this electrician went down and started doing another job. Now, this isn't on me. This is on the contractor, since he subbed it out, and he's already got another electrician working on it. But that's one right there. I mean, this guy was paid a month ago to do a job that he said he could do in 2 weeks, and he's down in 2 hours away doing another job. And so my contractor fired him. So, a lot of stuff like that. I had a contractor who basically did all this shoddy work, and the inspection didn't go as planned, and he took off and basically got me probably for 70 grand there. Had some other contractors just do bad work, cutting corners. Yeah,
I've had to collect on bonds. I've had usually the biggest problem that you run into is with contractors not showing up on time.
Yeah.
And so usually when you have a job, you have contractors kind of set up. You come in this week, you come in the following week, because they're all reliant on the previous guy to get their work done. And if your plumber decides he's not going to show up for 2 weeks, it pushes your electrical guy or your flooring guy, and everything gets stacked up. And, a job where you thought it was going to take 2 months might take 4. And, all of that costs money. All that carrying costs, it's just money out of your pocket.
Yeah. On the rehab deals, what's the best type of loan that you think for if I just want to do a fix and flip? Do you think it's doing hard money? Do you think it's potentially doing a conventional loan? And give me some scenarios as to where you might use each particular loan product, Josh.
So if you have somebody and you're a great FICO, you have fantastic income, going more of a conventional basis might be the way to go. You get a better interest rate. There's some positives to it. However, there are some benefits of going, kind of classic hard money. And a lot of people resist it because they go, oh, the rate's higher. There potentially could be some additional fees. But the benefit of going hard money is it allows you to execute quicker. And being able to execute, a month quicker or 2 months quicker or 3 months quicker can be a huge savings. And so paying an extra couple $1,000s in interest on a hard money loan, when you look at it versus doing something with maybe potentially a better interest rate, it may not make sense. And oftentimes it doesn't make sense. And so if I could take a property and flip it into whatever I want to do, whether it's put it into saleable condition or rent it out, and I could knock that thing out in 30 or 60 or 90 days, depending on what needs to be done to it. It may make a ton more sense with that flexibility, because on a private money loan, I might be able to close in a week. With a conventional loan, it might take me several weeks. And then with a conventional loan, oftentimes you got people looking over your shoulder. There's all these draws that you need to do. They want to send out inspectors. They may look at it and go, hey, we're not ready to do the draw based on the inspection, and it slows you down. And so there's all kinds of things that people don't think about, and they worry more about, the interest rate. Oh my God, I may pay 3% more in interest on this for 3 months or 4 months, and it's very short-sighted.
Well, I think that one thing that hasn't been factored in modern day too, with what you're talking about, is it really didn't matter in the last 10 years until recently, you taking longer on a rehab, because a lot of times you were getting 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 in appreciation just during your rehab time. So it made all these these fix and flip guys look like freaking geniuses, because they might be making 20, 30K just on appreciation throughout the rehab process. So they didn't need to get it done quick. And a lot of times it was better for them to take a longer time rehabbing the property. But if you're in a market where everything's staying stagnant, or everything might even have the potential to go down, that's where all those so-called smart guys can get bit in the ass.
You bring up a good point. I remember so many times where I would see somebody flip a property and their only profit was based off of the appreciation that happened during their flip. And so they weren't very good flippers. It just happened to be that the market was so strong that they were, they were able to get a profit just based off of that.
Yeah.
And you see that a lot just in business in general. When business is booming, you see a lot of people that seem like they're geniuses, and then when business changes and business goes bad, and you really need people that are good at what they do and be able to think through things. The people that maybe seem like they were really smart at business, file bankruptcy, go out of business. They're flipping burgers, and so in the current market, the ability to be flexible and quick is, to me, far more important than maybe a slightly better interest rate, especially if you're in that side of the business. But so many people are trying to chase rate, and they're improperly focused.
Yeah. You got any story about maybe your best real estate deal that you've done, that you think you've done?
The best real estate deal I've done was just a function of the market. And we purchased a property. I'm going to make up numbers, but we purchased it at a foreclosure for, let's say, $200,000. We went to look at the property.
Are these made up numbers, or they're close to the numbers, right?
They're close to numbers. They're close to numbers.
This is what, 85 years ago, or?
It was like 1905.
Oh, okay.
And so purchased it at auction for $200,000. And so we went to the property, check it out, see what kind of damage was done, your basic kind of assessment. And so we were talking about, hey, what are we going to do here? Paint, carpet, whatever. And somebody came knocking on the door, and they said, hey, we've been looking at this property. Would you be willing to sell it to us? And so we sold it for $275 within 24 hours of owning it, having done nothing to the property.
It's not bad. $75K?
$75K. We closed the escrow like a week later, and didn't have to do anything other than walk through the property.
Nice.
That was probably my favorite flip.
And they paid cash?
Oh, I don't know. I don't remember. Must have, or it was hard money.
Yeah.
How about you? What's your favorite so far?
I had an apartment complex I bought for $720. Put about 100 in it, so I was in it for $820. Raised rents, let a year of appreciation go by with a year of raising rents, and it appraised at $1.6 million.
Very nice.
So I made $780 in 12 months. I think that's probably the best, and I still own it. I think that's probably the best. Yeah, I had another apartment complex I bought for $130,000, put $420 in it, and appraised at 1.1. So about the same type of numbers, 50% LTV, at the but not as large of a number. Yeah.
So I have a story for you. Just reminded me. So way back in the day, we purchased a foreclosure property, and it was a VA. And VA at least at the time had particular procedures, and so you had to put in a bid, and obviously the highest bid would win out. And so what we did is, and we found this to be oddly true, and it's a good technique, is that we called the real estate agent the morning the bids were going to be reviewed, and we called them up and said, hey, what's the highest bid so far? And the real estate agent, as a fiduciary, never should have said anything, but they said, no, the highest bid is $391. And so we came in at $392 and got the deal. And we ended up making $200,000 or $250,000 off of it. But it's funny how often, if you're friendly, you can call a realtor and find out what the highest bid is on a property.
Oh yeah,
whether it's standard or not. They really shouldn't be doing it, but they just oftentimes can't help themselves. And so an often underutilized technique is just fucking ask.
Yeah, no, I had a deal like that a few weeks ago, and I did get it. I got under contract on it, but I had already made an offer, but I made an offer with my realtor, And my realtors, I said, what's this listing agent telling you? And he's like, she's not telling me shit. And I go, let me call her. I think I can get some information out of her. So I call her, and I'm just friendly. I don't tell her that my LLC is the one that I've offered on this property. It was an 8-unit apartment complex, by the way.
I don't.
But I don't tell her that that's me. And, I signed it as the LLC, so she doesn't know that. And I just start talking to her, and I ask her, I go, what's it going to take to get this property locked up? And she's like, well, we already have 3 offers over ask. And she won't tell me in that first initial ask what the prices are. So I keep talking to her, asking her more about the property, and I go right back to that. And she gives me a little more information. She goes, well, we have one offer that's way above ask. We have one offer that's a little bit above ask. And then we have one that's a little more, right? And then I keep talking to her some more. And I come to find out that, she wouldn't tell me the exact amounts, but she basically said in a backhanded way that my offer that I had made was the 3rd offer at that particular time. So after that conversation, I said, and how I got all this information out of her was I was like, yeah, I don't have an agent. You can dual represent me. Now, that was a little white lie, but I didn't say it in that way. I kind of hinted at it, and I didn't directly lie about it. But I went back to my agent, and I told him that, and I go, let's just go way far and above, because I thought this property was worth about double what the asking price was. So I was willing to pay whatever I had to get this property, because it was listed at 50% LTV, and there's really nothing I need to do to the property. So I just went I ended up going $50K over ask when I probably could have maybe gotten it for $30K over ask, but I didn't want anyone to beat me out because there was so much room in there. And that was on an 8-unit apartment complex.
So something that's maybe you could call it unfortunate, but I see a lot, is that if you talk to the listing agent and you use the listing agent as your agent as well, so they're double ending the deal, it would be interesting to see on this, but it's shocking how often that you can win the deal if you allow the listing agent to also be your agent.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So that's an additional technique that's an underutilized technique, and it's really a function of human nature and creating that bias. But oftentimes, if it's close and the agent's double ending a deal, they're going to be selling your offer a little more than another offer that's similar.
Well, they're going to get paid close to double, right?
For sure. For sure.
Yeah. And what I've noticed on those deals that I have done with agents who are double ending the deal is they tend to favor the buyer. They're actually trying to make the buyer happy most of the time, because that seller, they already have that listing. And so they're really buyer friendly in that case. So sellers, actually be aware of that. If your agent's double ending the deal, they might not be as favorable to you as you think.
If I were selling a house, I don't think I would allow my agent to double end a deal unless I was extremely comfortable with what was going on.
Yeah.
Because just human nature, and I've seen it so many times, you're exactly right. If your agent is supposed to be representing you and then all of a sudden they're representing both parties, is that person really your agent? Are they really representing your interest? No.
They represent
even
the buyer.
If it's within the same, even if it's within the same office, oftentimes I'll see where they'll say, hey, we have a policy where we give it to a different agent in the office. Even then, I wouldn't be comfortable with it.
Yeah.
So, there are situations where it's fine, but yeah, when agents are double ending deals, it creates all kinds of issues for for the seller.
This is a topic that I've actually never discussed with anybody before. First time I've ever talked about that. Yeah, it's interesting.
Well,
you
it's
have the
crazy.
same view on that.
I've seen it so many times, and I know so many agents. And I mean, if you just think of the human condition, where you say, "Hey, I'm going to get paid $20,000 on this," and then I could get paid $40,000 on it if I can somehow convince my seller to take this deal. And so it's hard for even somebody that's super ethical to not go, why, this guy's he was pretty fucking ugly, 20 minutes ago, but until he signed his, agency agreement, then he became really, really attractive guy, really like his offer. And it happens super regularly. It happens an incredible amount of the time where the agent that's double ending the deal shockingly gets the double end deal.
All right. Well, I think that's it for today. Unless you got another UFO story for me, I think you got. We need part 2.
I'm gonna say I got one for you, but I'm gonna save it for our next episode.
Are you? Okay.
Yep. Nope.
That's unfortunate.
So we're actually wearing the same shorts. I think mine are a little tighter than yours, but they're the exact same shorts. So
are they Callaway?
No.
Yeah, they're not the same then. These are official golf Callaway shorts. I do get them at Nordstrom Rack, and they're only like $15 when they're on sale. But they're like $60 shorts, $70 shorts.
So yeah, next time I'll make sure that I'll wear the same shirt. I'll get a hat so we can be matching.
Yeah, well, I'd have to look like a douchebag then.
Too late.
And that's it for the On the Block podcast, episode 7. Thank you for joining us with your hosts, Pierce and Josh.